podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Hello everyone, I'm Chris Wynn and welcome to Howe're the podcast. And unfortunately, we are gathering to talk about something that hasn't happened in 7 weeks. Yes, we are about to react to a Sunderland defeat, our third of the season so far. And not only that, but we also drop out of the Champions League places. But I mean, who would have thought that I'd be using that in the intro to a podcast when we kicked off the season against West Ham back in August? But yes, the lads came unstuck at Craven Cottage in a game where it did feel like one moment would make all the difference. And fair play to Elizabeth from the Fulhamish podcast who came on last week and talked to us because she said it would come down to a late moment for one of the sides. And so it proved. But let's crack on and get through it because luckily for you, there is another voice to go over it all. And I'm very pleased to have Andrew Smithson with me. Hello, Andrew.
Hello, Chris. I would ask how you're doing, but we've both sat here with glum faces, aren't we?
Yeah, but it was funny because I was thinking before we recorded, actually, that it's a feeling that it's a strange feeling now, isn't it?
That's exactly it. Did you say 7 weeks since we last lost?
October the 4th.
Yeah, I mean that's really good going, and it's mad how football fans are. This morning when we were talking and previewing the game, everything's brilliant, everything's rosy. And now I'm like, sick of football. And you see another results come through, another team's winning, and you're like, oh, I hate them. I wish they hadn't won. Everything's crap now.
Well, that's it. We're actually, I'm looking, thinking, actually, it could be a Liverpool fan tonight. Getting hammered at home against Nottingham Forest. They didn't expect that. At least we kind of not half expected, but at least we're thinking, oh well, it's an even game and could go either way. But it could be worse. I mean, bloody hell! Like I said, who would have thought? You asked me before the game, before we hit record. Actually, you were like, "What's the table like? Where have we gone? Oh, we've dropped down to 6th." And it's like, well, it's kind of happy days, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, we can live with 6th. I mean, let's not forget our best ever finish in this division was 7th. So that just puts into context how we're doing in the Premier League era. This is still the best we've ever known it. Just like you say, you always want more, don't you? You're always thinking, oh, let's keep this winning run going. Let's keep the mood high. So then when you do lose a game, you're like, oh, hang on, how what we're meant to do now? This isn't right.
Yeah, well, that's it. Well, if it's like past seasons, we might only need to finish 12th or something like that to qualify for Europe, so it might not be a bad thing. But look, let's get into it because you called it, Andrew. To be fair, you well, actually, I'll say you called it. You called 90% of it because in the preview before the game, you thought that he would go in with the same personnel, the same starting 11, but you thought there might be a tweak in terms of pushing Gachowda a little bit further up the pitch. But he went straight in with that back five, and it was the same 11 for the 4th game in a row. And I have to admit, I was a little surprised. I mean, look, because we did talk about it in the preview, and I was kind of, well, let's say maybe egging you and Gav on a little bit to say, how is he going to change it? Is he going to change it? But I honestly felt that it was a little bit of a time to freshen it up.
Well, yeah, certainly on the back of the results, you can make that argument a lot easier now. I don't get the feeling that was anything to do with systems or selections. It just felt as if nobody got going, Chris. It was all quite sluggish. But hey, you could be right. Had there been a couple of lads starting the game who hadn't been in the team recently, they could have just brought in that extra level of energy and freshness to them. But yeah, it was all just a bit meh, a bit off, and I did not see a performance of that level coming at all.
Well, I completely agree that that actually tactics did go out the window. But in terms of that intensity with the personnel, sometimes there is an element of becoming a bit blasé when you're in the starting 11 for the fourth time in a row, and there's people waiting in the wings. But like we said beforehand, it would have been harsh if somebody had been dropped. But the other thing I wanted to say, though, Andrew, as we get into it, we'll start talking about that side of it, because I agree with that, kind of the urgency and the intensity. But looking back at my notes, first 3 minutes, and I'm going to be very specific here because for some reason it was 3 minutes, but I thought we're on it here. First 3 minutes, I thought we were aggressive. We were on top of them. I thought we were almost on the front foot. There was a point where Michele was way inside the Fulham half, pressing them. And I thought, and actually the goalkeeper had the ball in the first couple of minutes, and we had three players sprint all the way up to the edge of the box to try and pen them in. And I thought, oh yeah, the lads are at it today. But it was almost like I was nodding, going, "Great, we're on it here."
Yeah, there was a bright start, and the second half, within seconds, probably our best chance of the whole game. You could argue. So we started well in both halves.
You've peaked too early, Andrew.
Well, forget that. The first half. We started well in the first half. Sadly, we forgot about the other 42 minutes and couldn't keep it going.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, could you put your finger on it a little bit? And I'm talking very specifically about that turnaround, because we came out the blocks, and we, like you said, I felt we charged at Fulham, and we really said, you're in a game here, and then suddenly it almost just stopped, and then I kind of wrote down after 10 minutes, I was like, well, basically we've stopped putting pressure on them, we've stopped like going out to them, and there was a stat that came up after 10 minutes saying Fulham had 82% possession. But there was an element of it as well that I thought they were trying to get us down their left, and they were trying to isolate Trey Hume against Kevin, seemingly in those early stages. But even though, going in those first 10 minutes, I thought, okay, well, this is a phase of the game. And we did we limited them to kind of long range shots or half chances or no chances at all. But I thought, keep them at arm's length. I was still fairly comfortable at that stage.
Yeah, keeping them at arm's length is exactly how I would have described it. It's almost as if we forgot the game plan, because, yeah, it was very bright, very aggressive in those first few minutes. And somebody must have gone, oh, hang on, this is not what we're being told to do. We're being told to just sit it out and just let Fulham kind of huff and puff. Because, yeah, for the rest of the half, it was a case of, we'll let Fulham have the ball, see what they can do. And we weren't under bundles of pressure. It was all just a bit so-so. Do you know what I mean? It's very, very peculiar.
Yeah, well, that's it. And then there was a definite lack of urgency. But like I said, it was kind of even for a little bit after that. The game got a little bit scrappy, and if I'm completely honest, I mean, a little bit boring, Andrew. I mean, would that be fair? Because look, as much as we're saying we weren't on it, and the amount of the times the commentator who I had on when I was watching the game said, Sunderland on at it. This isn't the Sunderland that we kind of expect this season. So even people who were outside of the bubble, if you like, because we know what we expect, but even people who are outside of the bubble and know what they expect of this Sunderland side, even they saw a difference against Fulham.
Yeah, there was definitely something not quite right. But in terms of it being boring, that doesn't bother me. And sometimes, again, you think that is the policy. Just let the first half be boring. Let's just suss out the opposition, work out how they're going to do things and how we're going to react. So, yeah, we weren't looking great. There was a couple of times we started trying to string a few passes together and you thought, oh, here we go. And then it just fizzled out. But in that first half, I was never too concerned, because it felt deliberate. It felt managed almost, that we weren't going to be putting our foot down and going at them full throttle. I can well understand, though, that, yeah, anybody who, if that was the first time they've seen Sunderland this season, they'll be thinking, hang on, I don't get it, because we've heard so many positive things and just not, it wasn't there today. I will say we've also got to factor in the conditions made it hard. I know it was hard for both teams, but I do think that will have had a bearing on why we weren't the Sunderland we've been expecting of late.
Is that, I mean, you say that, and okay, the weather's always going to have an impact on the game, especially when it's hosing it down like that. But I would say, okay, well, look, if you've got a slick passing game, a one-touch game, and the ball's sticking or the ball's skidding off the surface, I'd say, yeah, okay, I'm having that. But because a lot of people will say, well, it's one of those games, the conditions. I remember that Portsmouth game years ago where everyone went, well, yeah, I mean, we just didn't handle the conditions and all that sort of stuff. But I still think if somebody's going to give that argument, it impacts the time when you're in possession, but it shouldn't impact the point where you're out of possession and closing people down.
No, that's fair. I feel as if there was something not quite right about the team, and there must have been something in the back of their minds. But I fully take the point that it's the same for both sides, and it wasn't why we lost. I just wonder, was it niggling away at people and just making their decision making slightly different? Were they wary of getting caught out because of it or slipping over?
Yeah. Well, there was two really good examples of exactly what you're saying, Andrew, around the 20-minute mark. So there's one about 21 minutes and another one about 23 minutes. The first one was a Sunderland corner where I actually saw Lefay's gloves. He was almost wearing like keeper gloves. I couldn't, it wasn't just the old-fashioned mittens. I mean, these were proper like rain gloves. But anyway, enough of that. But the ball was cleared, and it was this. And Hume was on the edge of the box, and he kind of made this half-hearted attempt to kind of loop the ball back in, and he ended up looping it to a Fulham player, and then they broke. And I think it was Wilson in the end who curled the ball just wide of the post. And actually, I thought it was in at one point because the ball skidded off the surface. And then a couple of minutes later, and again, we talked about this in the preview, and Register Briss talked about it in his press conference during the week. We very cheaply gave away possession on the halfway line. And then Kevin carried the ball up to the edge of the box, and we opened up for him at one point, and I thought he's going to slot this in the corner. And Roos had to make a good save. But they were early examples, and there were danger signs really for the players and for the manager to say, what's going on here? It's almost you needed somebody at that point to take them by the scruff of the neck saying, this isn't going right.
That's exactly what we could have done with. Yeah, there was nobody kind of. It was all just a bit sleepy and a bit just ever so slightly off the pace. And yeah, we could have done with, as you say, somebody kind of shaking us and getting a reaction from us. Fulham, give them their dues, were pretty good at springing attacks on us. They were decent in possession. They had a bit of speed about them. And we just, I know I keep going back to these points. It felt a lot like previous times in the Premier League. We were all expecting a very different game today, and I certainly was expecting Sunderland to look a level above Fulham. There was none of that. Fulham weren't exactly pushed to their limits by us. You could even say one or two of them perhaps had a easier game than they expected.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting because after that second chance, because that was basically the biggest chance in the half when Kevin hit that shot straight at Roos. I mean, but again, that shows that we know that we weren't on our game, but there still wasn't much between the sides. And Fulham didn't come into the halftime break thinking, oh, well, actually, we should have been 2 or 3 up based on the chances we had.
True, and had it finished 0-0, it would have been just one of those, a dog of a game, last on match of the day, we'd take a point each. By Monday, everyone's forgotten about the match. So yeah, that could have very conceivably happened. Fulham weren't battering us, but just on the balance of play, they did have have a bit more about them. Had a couple of chances. I will say though that does frustrate me in these types of conditions. Roofs has had a couple of bits and pieces to do. There's been balls put in and shots along the deck or shots that are bouncing and what have you. Could we maybe have just, given the conditions, could we have just tested Leno out a couple of times with a couple of dafties just to make sure he's on top of it in that weather? Couldn't have hurt.
Yeah. Well, that's it. Well, actually, one thing I was going to mention, we talked about those two chances, and I was saying, it would have been good if somebody had gotten them by the scruff of the neck, whether it was the manager calling someone over or Xhaka even, getting a few players around. But the interesting thing was, I actually thought it was going to happen. I don't know if you noticed, because after that good chance that Kevin had, Michele went down injured. And at that point, I thought, actually, he's just sat down there. he's basically trying to take the sting out of the game, because we were really under pressure at that point. But I thought we were going to use that almost constructively, because quite a few players went across to Michele, and I thought this was the moment where a Xhaka or Ronaldo, one of the experienced players, to say, come on, right, let's sort this out. What's happening?
Well, we've seen that before, haven't we? The players have recognised as an issue, and there's even been times where they've maybe gone down unnecessarily. I think in this instance, he took a canny whack, so it looked to me genuine. But yeah, there was that incident. There was a time when Roofs went down, wasn't there? I think the suggestion was he'd kind of pulled a leg muscle or something.
I don't know if you noticed, he went for the ball behind the goal, and where the pitch slopes, his ankle just went over on it, rolled on it.
Yeah, his weight's kind of caused him to wobble there. Again, both situations, though, like you say, when you've got a player sat down on the pitch, that's the ideal time to say, come on, boys, we're not quite on it here. What do we need to do? But again, that didn't appear to happen. It was all quite strange, and I think maybe the players did have it in their mind of, this is just going to be a 0-0. Let's just get through. The effort was there. Don't get me wrong. I thought they worked hard and they were challenging and putting their bodies on the line when they needed to. Just there was no real cohesion there, and no. It was all just a bit scrappy and a bit stop-start. I think another thing that was an issue, and this is not to blame the referee, I did feel we gave away. They seemed to get free kicks easier than we did. That contributed to this inability of us being unable to get any sort of momentum, Chris. It was just nothing got going from us, I didn't think.
Yeah. Well, just as we get into half-time, we'll take a quick break as well. So we'll be back after these few ads. And welcome back to How We're the Podcast. And we've kind of covered the first half, and I can't believe we've taken longer than 15 minutes or whatever to go through that first half, because absolutely nothing happened pretty much. But just in terms of that break, because I thought, well, surely he's got to change something. The way that first half went. But again, with limited Fulham, so that you could see how he was kind of, if we step it up with this formation, then, we can do it. And again, you were right where you said, how much was this down to tactics? But I would have liked to, at half-time, come out second half and think, right, well, we're going to give them something to think about. At least just surprise them by, I don't know, switching the wingers. Or do we put Gertrude, you go into that midfield position and let's play three in the middle and let's crowd them out in there. Or just something. I just felt we needed a boost. We needed some freshening up.
We've seen that a lot, haven't we? That the 15-minute break is put to real good use, and the team do tweak things in the second half. But yeah, there was very little evidence of that, and yet I did give the game away earlier. Our best chance was within seconds of the game restarting, and you're thinking, oh hey, here we go. They've had a bit of a, maybe even a row in the changing rooms. They've got themselves going. Let's build on this. Let's start really pushing Fulham. But again, there wasn't a lot. There was a couple of attractive attacks where we put a few things together. There was one where I think it was Michele played a back heel, and it's ended up with Isidore having a shot. There was another one where it might have been Talby got the ball on the edge of the box and hadn't realised there was somebody in the right back position in acres of space. But it was all something and nothing. We might see a chance here. We might create something. Very few occasions where their defence have had to pull out a last-ditch challenge or the keepers had to pull off a great save. And it was more disappointing than the first half because, yeah, as I said, Chris, I almost felt as if that was deliberate and it was a ploy to just get ourselves bedded in and see what Fulham had about them. But we then didn't build on that. We didn't learn or change anything. We just stuck with that same kind of lethargic approach, and it really didn't do us any favours.
Yeah. Well, just quickly, just because, I mean, let's just focus on it because it was our best moment of the game, unfortunately. But that Lafayette shot, but I did want to mention it because it is worth talking about it purely because of Lafayette's first touch. Now, the long ball up from Roofs, I mean, very, very simple, but we tried to catch Fulham cold. And I think that was part of the ploy in the first half as well, with how we came out the traps in that opening period. But long ball up, and I mean I thought the first touch gave him the opportunity to take the shot. I don't think he meant to kind of touch it and then shoot. But as soon as he produced that touch, he just thought, oh, it's fallen nicely. And on a pitch like that, again with that Fulham chance in the first half, if it skids off the surface, you've got half a chance, haven't you?
Exactly, it was the right type of shot that he took, and it only went wide by a tiny fraction. I think if you're going to turn up wearing gloves and he had skins on his legs as well, didn't he? Or was it just his socks were pulled really high? I think if you're going to turn up dressed like that, you're going to have to show a few skills to stop you getting any grief. But it was a beautiful bit of play and one of those really annoying ones where I thought, that's in that. And it was the wrong side of the post and just sums everything up that it wasn't quite what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah. Well, actually, speaking of skins and strips and everything, if Johnny's listening, it was down to the fact we didn't play in red and white, wasn't it, Andrew? If anyone listened to the Room 101 pod, that we could have played it. Yep, that's it. We could have played in red and white, but didn't. We played in our third strip, and that's one for Johnny anyway. But yeah, actually, looking at the beginning of the second half, I thought until midway into that second half, I thought even though I was almost screaming at the game, going, just step it up. I wanted us to get out of second gear because we were comfortable. The game was anybody's game between the two sides. It wasn't like Fulham were looking fantastic and sharp and brilliant. I thought even though we, as far as we're concerned this season, we were well below par, we were still well within that game. And I thought at times in that second half, I thought actually we're picking up a bit of momentum, and then we kept losing, giving the ball away and doing something daft. But I still thought, and it's kind of reassuring that we were that far below par, but yet we still had a chance. We could have won this game.
Very, very possibly. And you've made the point in the past, and Elizabeth from Fulhamish made it very well with regards to this particular game. It all came down to a single moment that could have very easily happened at the other end. I'm disappointed. I'm a bit shocked by the performance, but a bad Sunderland performance in 2025 is still a lot better than a good Sunderland performance in previous Premier League campaigns. So we do need to keep that in mind. I do honestly think that everybody kind of just looked at the weather, looked at the conditions and thought, do we settle for a 0-0? Do we just get the game over with, take a point, everyone's happy? And then Fulham kind of spoiled that little pact by thinking, oh, actually, we might go for the win instead. We'll see if we can get anything here.
Well, again, another example, it was, you talked about Roofs going down injured earlier. Now, the bizarre thing, and this again plays into the whole, the players just weren't on it. The players weren't mentally kind of in tune with what was going on around them, because Roofs got injured, and then a minute later, we were sloppy in possession or trying to keep possession in our own half, and we put Roofs well under pressure in his own box with the ball. I think it might have been Xhaka. I can't remember who exactly played the ball back to him, but put him into trouble when his ankle, he's almost just gone off injured with his ankle. But then we'll put him under pressure with a bad ball where he has to do a Cruyff turn in his own penalty area to get out of trouble. But that was, again, another example of the players just not kind of almost taking the easy way out when they had possession of the football.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to analyse, and I wonder in the changing rooms afterwards there might be a sense of shock almost, because again, just another example of just slightly off with your decision making, slightly off with your execution of things. It wasn't like we were dreadful or a very obvious, well, the defensive pairing was wrong or the defensive pairing were too high up the pitch. There isn't a set of obvious reasons. Everything was just not quite what we'd come to expect. And that's a really good example of, if you've just seen your goalkeeper need a bit of treatment,
Yeah.
you tried to think, right, well, let's just let him get a bit of feeling back into his leg there. We'll take the ball away from our box. Just all these minor things. And I think the players in the changing room afterwards and on the bus home or however they get home, they'll just be looking at one another, and it's like almost as if the game just passed them by. Nobody really ever woke up or got to full speed. The positive to that is, well, all right, you can't imagine us being in that same frame of mind for the next few games. If we'd been absolutely turned over by Fulham, it would be easy to analyse and pinpoint, but that might be more of a worry going forward.
Yeah, that was one of the frustrations there. I thought Fulham were there for the taking, really, and the game was crying out for a moment, as I mentioned in the intro. It was kind of crying out for someone to just produce something of that moment of magic. Unfortunately, and it was interesting. It was frustrating from my point of view, because just before the goal, I was thinking, actually, we've played really badly and we might still nick this and get 3 points and not have a good performance. But the goal did come, 83 minutes. And again, I mean, we've talked about a few examples of, how it showed that lack of urgency, lack of intensity, whatever you want to call it. The goal was the best example. The ball played wide. Now, Trey Hume, I don't think he had his best afternoon he's ever had in a Sunderland strip. I thought he, don't know, a bit of a hangover from something, whether it was the break, whatever it was, just below par. And again, when that ball was played wide, there was no intensity, no urgency to stop that ball coming into the box. And you give somebody, with that much talent, time on the ball to pick his spot in the penalty area, and, you can, that corridor of uncertainty, the ball came in. And then when you saw, there was an interesting view from behind the goal that saw Ballard defending. Now, he seemed to not really go for the ball, but try and usher the man out of the way. And I don't know whether he thought Roofs was going to come for it, and Roofs didn't know if Ballard was going to clear it. And again, we've talked about examples, but this was the best of the lot, or the worst of the lot, however you want to look at it. That, you look at those 3 players who were involved, and they just weren't on it.
No. You used a couple of really good words at the start there. It was intensity. And as I say that, I've forgotten the other word. Urgency. Yes, urgency.
Sounds like 2 syllables.
Yeah, ironic that I'm going to say that was lacking, and then I can't even think of the right things to say. And that was lacking throughout the game. From Fulham's point of view, it was a quality goal. It was a brilliant ball in. It was a fantastic ball into the box, but it was very simple. And I do think that Roofs certainly made a move as if he was going to go for it, and then has just stopped himself. Again, maybe because of the conditions, he's a little bit concerned. Can he gather it safely? But all it takes is that split second, and if Ballard is also having a split-second thought.
Right.
Between them, they've both ended up leaving it. That could have very easily, on another day, seen both of them go for the ball and wipe each other out.
Yeah.
You're not so bothered, though, if we've managed to clear the ball away at the time. It did. It summed everything up in that very... I think both players there, it wasn't a massive defensive error, but both players there, if they had the time again, would try and deal with that ball in differently. And as you say, the initial getting down the left, he had a bit of time to pick his point. Can I just... apologies if I'm dropping you in it here, Chris. Was there a dubious free kick in midway in their half to start off that move? I seem to be remember grumbling.
Yeah.
And then there's a goal, you know?
Yeah. And look, you were absolutely right earlier on. Look, the referee was crap. But the thing is, I don't think the decisions impacted the game. Because look,
No.
you can argue, right, okay, really bad free kick to give away in terms of, shouldn't have been given, all that sort of stuff. Absolutely. Anybody who says all of that, I will not disagree with them. But then if that's given, it's not. He's not given a penalty where it's that he's given a free kick. We can still defend. Still got two. We've got an opportunity to not allow the cross come in, and then we've got an opportunity to stop the cross getting to the player in the center of the pitch. So yes, we can talk about referees, and he was awful, and he didn't help us whatsoever. But I don't think that really contributed to the end result.
No, you're dead right, and that's a really valid point. But again, it's another example though of there's an incident that's happened, and we've just not reacted to it in the same way we would have done in the past. There's been loads of free kicks given against us this season that we were unhappy with, but we switched straight back on and then got back to it straight away. Whereas this was one, yeah, okay, iffy decision. Next thing we know, we've conceded a goal. We've compounded that decision by not being at the races and not knowing what we do about it.
Yeah.
So entirely right. And please, I hope it doesn't sound like I'm trying to make excuses. It's just more an observation.
Yeah, no. Well, you're absolutely right. Completely. Anybody who says the referee was crap, I completely agree. And he didn't help things. But I don't think Register Briss will be looking at the referee's decisions. He'll be looking at what we did after the free kick was given and what we can do about it, because that's all we can control. With the referee's out of our control, so we've got to control what happens after that, win the ball back. But actually, just on that, in terms of being in control, I thought, well, and this was potentially the biggest shock of the day, actually, because if you need anything in a game to give you a shot in the arm and get you back almost to into focus, if you like, it's going behind. And I thought, right, come on then, let's set up a grandstand finish. We can still nick a point. And there was just nothing.
100% correct, mate. And again, like all of these things, it all just adds up to this general feeling of the game passed us by. With 5 minutes to go, 1-0 down, you expect to see someone throw the kitchen sink at it. But we brought a few subs on. They had a couple of touches of the ball, but they didn't really get into the game. And you can't necessarily criticise them for that, because the players who'd been on the pitch from kickoff hadn't quite got into the game.
Yeah.
And where was the forcing the issue there and making the goalkeeper work? If in those last 5 minutes we have 3 or 4 chances and we're unlucky or we're off target, you think, oh wait, at least we've panicked them. But Fulham probably can't even believe their luck. I'm really, you mentioned him there, Regis Labris. I'm really keen to see his take on this game.
Yeah.
He does learn lessons from defeat, and I'd be surprised if this rather flat atmosphere continues into the next game. But I am keen to see how he feels, why he feels it went like that. It's very rare he says anything and you think, that's not the same game I watched. He's normally pretty spot on, and I'm interested to know his take on it all. because you can tell between us we're coming back to those same points, but we can't quite fully put our finger on. Yes, we were off colour, but why were we off colour?
Yeah, and we are just to peek behind the curtain. We are recording kind of minutes, I suppose, after the final whistle. So join the lads in the morning as they go through what the managers said after the game. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about one more point about let's say this lack of intensity. In thinking back to the press conference, Register Briss said one of the difficult things is to get these players back from international break and get them back into that mindset. We talked about it on the preview, the psychology that Sunderland need and that mindset in the atmosphere, and that we're all in it together. We're all going to kind of throw our bodies on the line when we need to, and when people are in the zone in that way, as we saw against Arsenal, it almost comes easily. But he actually called it. He said it's difficult to get those players back into that mindset, and I think actually it showed.
Yeah, that might be one of the reasons. You referred there to throwing your body at the ball and what have you. Shortly before the winning goal, Ronaldo makes a really good block.
Yeah.
That was a really impressive piece of defending, and like I said earlier, I think the effort was there, the desire was there. I might even, if I may, steal a word from Lebris. It felt like the connection was missing, didn't it? And it could well be that break was actually badly timed for us. But frustratingly, we were led to believe Fulham often come back off international breaks a bit at all over the sea.
Yeah.
All at sea, sorry. But it was us that were like that. I sometimes think as managers or head coaches, it's a bit like, when you used to go out when you were young and you'd come home and your mum's stopped up to see if you've got home in one piece, and your mum's just been panicking, thinking, "Oh, what state is he going to come home in?" Lebris must spend those international breaks just stood at the doors at the Academy of Light, just so relieved when everybody comes walking in and they're walking on two legs and they've not got a cast or anything. But it could well be that could be the answer, that it was a hangover from the international break. They've been away from each other. They've maybe been asked to do different jobs for their international teams, and we just needed now a little bit more time to get to know each other again. It is also, in terms of games played together, is that our 12th match this season?
Yeah.
So there's still a lot of players who are still finding their feet. This doesn't have to be oh bugger, we're in trouble now. It's all going to go wrong. It was more just an off day, and hopefully we can get back on it straight away.
Yeah, well, that's it. Look, I mean, God, 6th in the Premier League. Those players have got more, enough credit in the bank from the performances they've put in this season. Where, look, it probably would have been more surprising and stranger if they didn't come out with a performance like that at some point. And again, we were talking about in the preview, like defeats are going to come. And the manager said it during the week. We said it in the preview. And it was surprising in this one. And it's funny because, and I'll put this to you as a last point, Andrew. Is it this one type of game? Because you go back to what I thought, well, potentially our worst 45 minutes before the Fulham game was the opening half against Everton, where we kind of went into that game thinking we should get 3 points against Everton. They weren't in a great place. The expectation was maybe a little bit on us. We go to Fulham losing 5 of the last 6. Expectations on us. Do you think there's maybe that's but then you compare it against the performance against Arsenal, where it's if you're not at the top of your game, you're going to get rolled over, and that's a completely different mindset to approach a game, isn't it?
That's a fair question. Yeah, there might be a bit of a mindset change needed against certain teams when there's more expectation on us. That's perfectly plausible. You could say it was maybe similar against Burnley as well, one of our other defeats.
Yeah,
We probably probably fancy to get a win that time. So yeah, that might be an area that needs to be looked at. How do we make sure we perform at our best when we are expected to do a bit more? Perhaps we see ourselves as underdogs and we like the idea of having our backs against the wall, and then when it's a different expectation and a different rhythm to the game, we might not be quite as comfortable with that. I suspect, and I hope, obviously, this will be one of those games that in years to come, somebody will say, oh, November 2025. Yeah, I think we played Fulham. I can't really remember it. I think it's just I hope it's just one of those games that, like you say, we're going to lose every now and again, Chris. It's bound to happen. Hopefully this is just one we move on from and you just think, oh yeah, we were a bit off the pace against Fulham, but there was no major consequences to it, hopefully.
Yeah, it was definitely one of those days. But I think that's I think we've talked about this dreary 1-0 defeat for far longer than we needed to or wanted to do. So I think that's a good place to leave it. Thank you very much, Andrew. I would say it was a joy to talk to you. It's always a joy to be in your presence, but under better circumstances, mate.
Exactly. Same to you. It's much more fun when we're both sitting down giddy because we've beaten somebody and we can't even string a sentence together because we're up on the roof.
Yeah.
But hey, you're dead right. This is a slightly unusual feeling this week. I'll probably wake up on Sunday morning and go, hey, God, yeah, Sunderland lost. I should be stomping around in a foul mood. But you made a great point. The players have got enough credit in the bank. As long as this doesn't turn into a longer problem, we'll be all right. We'll be all right.
That's it. We'll go again. But thanks very much for your time as always, Andrew, and thanks again everyone for listening. Don't forget we'll have a more in-depth look at the game with the lads on our Sunday supplement in the morning. Not only will they no doubt look at what Register said, but I think it kicked off after the final whistle, and we haven't had a chance to delve into whys or what happened. I think on the pitch there was a little bit of fisticuffs, but I'm not sure if it was significant or not. But I'm sure the lads might mention that a little bit in the morning. And of course, we'll have loads of reaction on the Roker Report website as well. But from us, it's bye for now.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.